This is the Anthrobiology Podcast, hosted by me, Gabby LaPera. Every 2 weeks, I interview a biological anthropologist about what makes us, us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Anthrobiology Podcast. Joining me here today via Zoom, because she's very far away, is Stine Carlsson. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I am very good. Thanks. This is my annual Talk to a Student episode because I did one last year and I was like, you know what? We should do this every year. And Stine didn't realize, but she was volunteering herself for this. She emailed me and I emailed her back because I always email people back when they email me.
You really do. I actually Instagrammed you at first and then you asked me to email you, which was way easier. So
yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm not on Instagram that often. I feel really bad. Actually, someone sent me an Instagram message and I opened it and I looked at it. And this was like right before I went camping. And then I never responded because I went camping and I didn't have service. And today they emailed me and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Normally I do respond on Instagram even though.
You responded to me, definitely. I think everyone's just busy right now, and you do that all the time where you open messages and you're like, oh darn, yeah, I forgot to answer that.
Yeah, I should know better by now. I'm 32. I should know that if I open a message and don't respond right away, I'm never going to respond. It's just a fact I have to accept about myself and maybe live my life accordingly.
We all do. Hey, we all do.
But thank you for coming on the show. Tell us really a little bit about yourself. You are in Northern Ireland, but not from Ireland.
No, I am not.
Northern Ireland.
There's a distinction there somewhere.
Yes,
I'm currently in Belfast, where it is, 10:30 p.m., which is fantastic. I am originally from Denmark, so a little further away. And I moved here about 6 years ago, and I did my undergraduate at Queens University Belfast in archaeology and history. And then I went to Dundee for a year to do my master's program. And then I really missed Belfast, so I came back here to do my PhD, also at Queens University Belfast.
Yeah, and I think that right away we can hear a little bit of a difference between the US system and the UK system, which is that for us, masters take at least 2 years.
Yeah,
generally.
It would be the same in Denmark as well. The masters take 2 years. Over here, it's only 1 year, and our undergraduate is 3 years. In Scotland, I think it's 4 years. So there is a bit of a difference as well within the UK.
Yeah, so anyone who's thinking about studying in a different place, I guess make sure you understand what that entails.
Oh, definitely. We did actually have a lot of Americans in my master's program. They were probably just really happy that it was just the 1 year, and I think a little bit cheaper than it would be in the US as well.
Yeah. And what do those master's programs look like? Because in the US, you typically have two different types of master's programs, one with a thesis at the end of it, and one that's just like the classwork. And like maybe you do like a project. What about in Scotland?
I don't actually know if there are any without a thesis. I think mostly it's just the regular kind of top masters where you do a couple. I did 2 semesters where there was modules, and then the third semester was your research project. So that was throughout the summer. So you sort of run the full 12 months rather than the 9-month sort of school year. You do the modules, and then you do your project. And I think there are what's called an MRes, where you do a full master's, pretty much just you do your project throughout the full year. And I think you might have to do a couple of courses, a couple of classes as well, but mostly what you focus on is your big research project. So it's almost like a mini PhD in a sense. And a lot of people go from that and then end up extending that research into a PhD a lot of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What did you do for your master's research?
So I did a forensic anthropology master's. So for my research project, I looked at kind of an extension of my undergraduate, actually. So in both cases, I looked at age estimation, which can be really tricky in archaeological remains, particularly in adults, particularly in older adults. So that's kind of a whole can of worms there. So I looked at that in my undergraduate, and then I looked again in my postgraduate and seeing if you could use 3D scans to sort of use the visual methods of age estimation on what's called the auricular surface, which is a surface in your pelvic bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the auricular surface, for people who are not super familiar with oscoxi or innominates.
I say the word innominates a lot, and then people are like, the what? And I'm like, oh,
the pelvis.
Yes.
So your pelvis is actually, so in the front, it attaches to itself, and horrifyingly during childbirth, that front part splits apart so the baby's head can get through there. But in the back, what it's attached to is your coccyx, your sacrum, actually. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's attached to your sacrum. Your coccyx is the little pointy bit at the bottom of the sacrum. And the part where the sacrum attaches to the pelvis, it has this surface that when is separated, because you're dead, hopefully.
One would hope.
Because if you're separated when you're alive, yeah, it's no good. But when it's separated when you're dead and you're just a pile of bones, it actually looks kind of like an ear, which is why it's called auricular surface, because that comes from the Latin word for ear.
There's a lot of things called something auricular throughout the skeleton that have nothing to do with the ears, which is very confusing. And I don't know why people decided to do this. But
it's just ear shaped. People look at it and they're like, yeah, that looks like I guess that looks like an ear to me.
Yes, exactly.
I would look at that and be like, wow, that looks like a jelly donut to me. So I guess it's good that I'm not naming things.
Yeah, it looks a bit like a bean. It sort of depends on the person. They can be very different in shape. But yeah, this joint is what we call immobile. So it doesn't move more the more that you move throughout life. So it's sort of a static joint, which means it wears more systematically throughout life on a similar sort of time scale for everyone.
Right. So it's not like something like the knee or like the elbow. So for example, if you're a professional tennis player, your elbow joint is going to age very differently than someone who maybe sits at a computer all day. Probably.
Definitely.
So that's really smart. So what did you discover? Was this a metric or a non-metric method that you were trying to develop?
I wasn't necessarily developing. I was seeing if the methods could be used on 3D scans, so sort of the visual methods by Buckbear and Chamberlain, which are meant to be used on, you look at the bone and you see different things, striations, granulation, porosity, sort of classic traits that come throughout with age. And sort of, you can look at these on the physical bone, and then I was seeing, can you look at photographs of this bone? Can you see the same feature? Would you score it the same way? And then do you look at 3D scans of the bone? Would you score it the same way? Would you see the same features? So I did sort of intra-observer studies and found out that you can use photographs fairly reliably, which was a bit surprising actually, but 3D scans aren't sensitive enough to pick up all the tiny pores, the porosity that comes. So it's sort of the scan, the way you have to process it, it ends up filling in all these wee holes, so you can't actually see it. And it's the same with the granulation, sort of the grainy surfaces that becomes really difficult to see. So those can't actually be scored very reliably on 3D scans, at least not with the current technology.
Well, maybe one day. For listeners, can you describe what the aging process looks like in the auricular surface? So you talked about striations, granularity, and porosity. So, for example, do you get more striations? What do the striations look like? And striations are just lines, by the way. It's just a fancy way to say lines.
They're just wee ripples on the surface. So you sort of start out with quite a lot of ripples. And then throughout, when you're sort of a young adult to moving into slightly older, they start to flatten a little bit. And then as you get even older, you get more sort of roughening of the surface. So it becomes more granular, sort of looks like there's a bunch of wee bumps and stuff on it. And then it also becomes really porous. So you'll start to see all these holes in it. And eventually it'll just look really sort of degenerate, sort of a lot of holes, a lot of porosity, a lot of granularity, everything. So it doesn't have those nice ripples. It doesn't have a nice sort of flat surface anymore either.
Yeah, for sure. And do you know anything about how reliable these age estimation methods are? Just like the visual ones that you were testing?
Yeah, they're generally quite unreliable, which is something that the authors also are very clear about. And I think in general with adult age estimation, so I think everyone will know, you'll see an 80-year-old person that's running around doing all kinds of stuff, and you'll see a 60-year-old person who's basically immobile and maybe can't do a whole lot. So aging in adults is very variable. There's a difference between how people age. So in general, when you're looking at a skeleton, you're trying to figure out the biological age, which can be super difficult because people age differently depending on your genetics, depending on what kind of life you've led, all kinds of stuff. So in general, we're moving, I think, a bit away from trying to assign specific age estimates. And I know for archaeology, what we tend to try to do is say young adult, middle adult, older adult, because that's the most reliable. I think some of the methods for auricular surface, you can maybe go to sort of the minimum is a 10-year age range, but you usually want to go quite a bit wider than that for it to be accurate.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And something that I don't think has been brought up on the show before is that people do age in super different ways. Historically, when we've talked about aging on the show, the big thing that we talk about with adult age estimations is past a certain point. Once you have all of your bones fused and all of that, it's much harder to assign an age estimate
Yeah.
because bones fuse on like a very set regular schedule. And past that, it's just like, we know they're older than 25 and they're probably less than 80.
It is. And that was sort of one of the things I was trying to look at in my undergraduate, was seeing, can we find any methods that are good at evaluating older adults? Because a lot of these sort of methodologies say the oldest age category is 40 plus. So you're saying, okay, but there's quite a lot of people that are over the age of 40. And even back then, there would have been quite a lot of age categories above 40. But that's just because at that point, and this sounds horrible, but you're sort of starting to deteriorate to the point where it's really hard to estimate sort of the rate at which. But it is sort of that double-edged sword in anthropology and archaeology, where in children, you can really reliably age them, but you can't determine their sex. Whereas in adults, it's really hard to age them, but it's usually quite straightforward to determine the sex. So you can have one or the other, and that's it.
That's funny. That's a really good perspective on it. So what has it been like for you? Have you been working with like a principal investigator, or have you kind of originated these research ideas on your own?
I've usually had someone to steer me towards it. And I think there's a lot of people who feel that for you to be super invested in a research project and for you to really want to spend, especially for a PhD, a lot of your life sort of delving into this, that you should come up with it on your own. But I think that can be really difficult when you're not necessarily in the field, or you haven't done a lot of sort of reading of everything. You don't really know where there are gaps. It can be really difficult to determine what could be a viable project and what cannot. So I've usually had someone tell me, I think it would be a good idea for someone to do either this or this or this. And then you can sort of say, okay, well, I'm quite interested in this, and maybe I can add this to it or something like that. So most of the time it's been sort of a little bit collaborative. Usually someone suggests it, and then you kind of take that on board and maybe bring your own ideas to it or your own perspectives. But usually it's been sort of someone else saying, you know, what we could really use is this. And I think that's been really helpful for me as well.
For your PhD research, are you continuing to do age estimate research?
No, I'm actually not, which was a bit, I wouldn't say scary, but it was sort of like, I had done 2 dissertations on this, and I was like, well, I know what I'm doing. And then I ended up doing something that I'd never done before. And it was a proposed project already that I applied for, which, as luck has it, I just absolutely love it. I'm super passionate about it now. It wasn't something I was into before, but now it's just all that I care about, which is super fortunate. And I think it's been really good for me, because I wouldn't have been able to come up with a really valid project on my own in the same way. You might have a good idea, but kind of pan out, kind of turn into kind of sort of fall apart at some point. So I think it was really helpful that this was a set project, and then you can still take it in your own directions, obviously.
Oh yeah, totally. So one thing that has happened to friends of mine in grad school is that they've started out with one project, and then maybe a year or 2 years even into it, they've suddenly discovered that it's not a viable dissertation topic anymore.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend who was studying post-traumatic stress disorder. She was not in anthropology. She was in psychology. Post-traumatic stress disorder in refugees. And she was supposed to work with a refugee resettlement center in the United States. And then Trump shut down the resettlement centers.
Oh, no.
And so suddenly her research project that she'd been working on for 2 years and like getting all the IRB approvals and like ethical review. Sorry, the IRB is like an ethics review board. And doing all of the pre-work and like doing all the literature review for it was just gone.
Yeah.
She had to start over completely from scratch. So stuff like that happens sometimes. Or sometimes like you start doing the work and you realize like your initial idea wasn't viable for whatever reason. So that's definitely something I don't think that they really tell you going into your PhD program might happen to you.
I think it really depends on where you are as well, because when I was doing my master's, I really got the sense that they were saying, if you didn't come up with your topic yourself, if someone else came up with it, you applied for it, you're never going to be invested in it, you're going to hate it, things like that. So that was sort of almost shaming people for not coming up with their own topics. And I sort of got, oh my God, I'll have to take a year out after my master's because I have no idea what there's a need for, what could be a viable project. Sort of, I'll have to read around a lot. I'll have to see what I want to delve into. I'll have to, all this stuff. And then I actually talked to my current supervisor about that now. And she was like, no, I actually think it's the other way around. I think a lot of people who come up with their own project end up really struggling with it at a certain point because it's not necessarily viable. And I think it's really helpful to take advice from someone who's in the business or sort of in that environment already, who know what can be a viable project, what can be really useful, what is there a need for.
Speaking of which, what are you studying?
What a question, huh? So I'm currently looking at what we call non-specific indicators, or indicators of non-specific stress, and past populations in medieval Ireland and Scotland, to try to see if we could see any correlation with the physical environment. So investigate any patterns, both sort of within and between the different populations, and try to look at all the factors that could be causing whatever patterns we're seeing. So are there a lot of differences in stress? So are there some populations that are experiencing a lot more stress than other populations? What could this be because of? Could it be culturally? Is it because of the physical environment they live in? Different things like that. So I'm taking in sort of the whole biocultural context and trying to look at the big picture of why there might be patterns of sort of varying levels of stress between and even within different populations.
What kind of stress indicators are you looking at?
Yeah, so it's a bit of when I first applied, it said that you'd be looking at linear enamel hypoplasia, cribororbitalia, and parodic hyperostosis. And I was like, okay, what do those things mean? And now I've done so much reading on them all. I feel like I know everything there's to know, which is not true, but you do a lot of reading for these.
Right. Yes. You will have to read a lot in grad school. That's definitely a good takeaway from this episode.
100%. But you'll also be really interested in reading because everyone has a different perspective and you'll be like, ooh, what does this person say?
For sure. I will say that one thing that happened to me in grad school is that all the reading I was doing was super interesting, but it also made me not want to read for fun anymore. Like I used to read like a murder mystery to unwind or something, which is funny. Just reading about someone else dying. It's cool.
No, I definitely understand.
But it's like when I was in grad school, I just felt so guilty reading for fun when I was like, I could be reading for work right now. So I stopped reading.
It's really helpful to listen to audiobooks because it doesn't feel the same. And it's something that you can do while you're getting ready or you're walking to uni or something like that. So I think that really helps to listen to them as audiobooks.
That's super smart. I hadn't even thought about that. I remember I discovered podcasts in grad school. And that was like when I really started like listening a lot to podcasts. There was this one summer where I had to keep these fish alive. Oh my God, it was terrible. It had nothing to do with my grad program or anything like that. I just needed money that summer, and there was another lab that was hiring like fish caretakers.
Interesting. Wow.
And I was caring for these fish, and these fish were like, honestly, it felt like they were suicidal. It was so hard to keep these fish alive. It was horrible. Like I'd come into the lab every morning. Oh my God. I'd come into the lab every morning and there'd be like 3 dead fish that I'd have to like commit to the fish funeral pyre.
That's very upsetting. That sounds very mentally draining. I will say that sounds mentally draining.
It was I listened to, on average, I think like 35 hours of podcasts a week.
Yeah.
That summer. It was a lot of anyway. Audiobooks, good coping mechanism.
And even podcasts as well, because it makes you feel like you're, especially podcasts about what you're doing. So I listen to your podcast, for example, this podcast.
So nice.
No, but because it really gets me in the mindset of like, okay, now I'm going to go do work because I hear all about these amazing people and all this amazing research, and it makes me want to be a part of that. So it's very inspiring for me. And it also can make me feel like I'm being productive without actually being super productive if that's not sort of the mood I'm in that day.
So you did all this reading.
These indicators.
Yes, indicators. Tell me.
Yes. So the first one, probably the easiest one to explain to start with, is linear enamel hypoplasia, which is a big word for what I think is essentially a fairly simple thing. So your teeth are produced when you're growing up. Your teeth are kind of produced layer by layer, and they grow from the tip of the crown and then down. And so that takes a lot of energy for your body to be producing the enamel and producing the teeth, building them. And so if you are sick or you're malnourished or there's something else that means that you're sort of metabolically stressed, it's going to redirect that energy somewhere else. It's not going to spend energy building the enamel. And so the enamel essentially has a defect in it. So it'll be what we call linear enamel hypoplasia is the sort of line on the teeth, a horizontal line across your tooth when it does grow. And you'll be able to see that on the tooth. So that's where your enamel has stopped growing for a while because there's some sort of stress in your body that's taken precedence. You're spending your energy staying alive instead of building enamel, which is obviously more important at that point in time. So we can look at these lines, and because teeth grow at a relatively stable rate, although that's very population specific, we can sort of estimate when this defect occurred. At what age was this person experiencing some sort of physiological stress?
Up to a certain point, right? Because once teeth finish forming, they finish forming. We're not like sharks. I think sharks grow teeth throughout their lives.
Oh, do they really?
I think so. I could be making that up. Maybe it's alligators. I can't remember. There's definitely a species that produces teeth.
Some sort of prehistoric animal that constantly teeth. I think sharks do have lots of teeth, so that would make sense. But yeah, of course, when your teeth have finished forming, you can no longer get these lines. But the good part is because enamel never remodels, you're sort of, unless you brush the lines away with a toothbrush, which can happen in modern populations, is that you can't see these lines anymore because they've kind of been worn away by the abrasion from your toothbrush. But essentially, you will be able to see these lines throughout your whole life, even though this stress occurred in childhood.
Can you see the lines on like x-rays? So even if like the surface lines get polished away, could you see them on a deeper level?
I'm not actually sure about that. I've never heard of that, but that could be interesting to look at. It's the enamel, but there is sort of deeper levels of enamel. So it depends on how significant. I mean, I've seen some defects that are very intense, but usually they can even be quite hard to spot.
Interesting.
Macroscopically with the naked eye. So it's more reliable to use microscopic methods because it can be really difficult to tell.
Interesting. Okay, so we have linear enamel hypoplasia. What's next?
Cribra orbitalia and parodic hyperostosis, which are historically have been considered sort of relatively to have the same cause. They probably don't, but this is sort of a very debated topic, and as is their etiology. So what causes them? So, which is why for a lot of projects, including mine, sort of using them as non-specific indicators, meaning it's not that we're not entirely sure what causes it, but it could be a number of different things that can cause it, which is the same with enamel defects, so linear enamel hypoplasia. But essentially, cribra orbitalia are sort of parodic lesions, a bunch of pores on the top of your eye orbits, so at the top of your bony orbits, that you can see. And parodic hyperostosis is essentially the same thing, a bunch of sort of holes, small porosities across your skull and different bits on the outside of your skull.
Yeah. So I think listeners, imagine if you've ever held like a piece of ivory, like you can imagine how smooth that is. When you're talking about holes, like you're actually talking about like, imagine like a piece of coral that has like really small holes in it, or I don't know, like it looks almost like a very, very small sponge. Like you get like visual holes a lot of times that you can actually see, and it feels rough to the touch. And the eye orbits, just in case you don't know where your eyes are, if you touch the squishy part of your eye, have your eyelids closed, just move up, and that bony bit, those are the outer edges of your orbits, and that's kind of like where you would expect to see cribra orbitalia show up.
Yeah, sort of right inside, below your brow, sort of right inside.
Yeah, don't poke your eye out, please, while you do this.
No, that wouldn't be good. That would be bad,
actually.
100%. So these are sort of caused by, there's a lot of debate on what exactly causes them, but mostly it's agreed that it's caused by some sort of anemia. So essentially, when you have anemia and you're deficient in red blood cells, what your body needs to do is try to produce more red blood cells. So essentially, when you're a child, those are produced in all over your body, including in your skull. And so when this happens and your body needs to produce a lot of red blood cells, the layer that it's being produced in, which is the sort of middle layer of your bone, which is the spongy bit, that has to expand to make room for more production. And when this expands, it takes over the sort of harder bone and it gives it that spongy appearance, which is what you said. It looks a bit like a sponge, which it does.
Yeah.
Especially in really severe cases. So it's essentially just a sign that your body has needed to produce a lot of red blood cells at some point. And again, these do heal to a certain extent throughout life, because this is, again, something that occurs in childhood. but you can still see them in adults up to a certain age where it does can become more difficult to see.
For sure. And so what are you still in the lit review stage of your research, or have you started looking at archaeological remains?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a bunch. Well, I'm looking at least 3, potentially 4 populations from Ireland, and then several, I think about 4 populations in Scotland as well. And most of these are quite large populations that I'm looking at with hundreds of individuals, which is really, really good for data collection, because you need statistically significant sample sizes in order to be able to say anything real. And so I'm still in the lit review stage in a lot of ways. And I just had my 9-month review, which went really well.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So I have a literature review, mostly written. And then I have started doing some lab work as well. So I've done almost one of my populations is almost done. So I've looked at a lot of this, and you do find it incredible how easily you get the hang of it, or how easily you get used to it. And you can say, oh, this is, a bad case, or this is a type 1 or a type 4 or a type 3. And it just sort of is ingrained in you really easily. You're like, oh, yeah, there it is. which is really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has the grad school experience just generally been like for you? And what do you kind of wish that you'd known before you went?
Yeah, so when I first came to the UK to study in Belfast, and I did my undergraduate at Queens here in Belfast, and I was just so happy because everyone here is just really nice and really warm and welcoming. And I just, didn't have any sense of that harsh academia world that some people sometimes talk about. Not that I was ignorant of it, but it was just kind of not present, because everyone honestly is like, the archaeology department isn't huge. So it's kind of like a big family. Everyone knows each other, everyone collaborates, and it's all good. And then when I went to do my master's program, I think I went for what was ranked highest based on, I got good grades. I could get into pretty much any master's program, that I would want to go to. So I thought, I'll go for the one that's rated the highest, the one that's meant to be the best. And I was just very, very disappointed, because for the first time I was sort of faced with that. People who aren't supportive, people who don't seem like they want you to succeed, people who seem like they don't really want you to be there. There's just no support. It was kind of a constant air of superiority, almost, trying to prove I'm smarter than you, which, of course you should know more than me. You're my lecturer. You're meant to know more than me. That's supposed to be what that is. But it wasn't like we're colleagues and I'm helping you gain access into this world so we can all do research and sort of bring the field closer, bring the field further. It was very much a trying to put people down, it felt like. And so I was really disheartened, and so was a lot of the people I went with also, because this was for the UK, it's a very expensive program. So we spend all this money to come here, and everyone's awful. We're not learning a lot, and the exams aren't fair. I got very minimal help on my master's thesis. Sort of, they wouldn't even read it through properly, and it was sort of just a very disheartening process. So I actually did start to question if I wanted to be in academia at all, and I left it for a year to go work in a corporate job, which I think happens a lot. And I think that that's such a shame that happens a lot. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do until I was contacted by my current supervisor, who was my sort of mentor in my undergraduate, Professor Eileen Murphy. And she's just the nicest person you'll ever meet. And she's just fantastic. And she sort of encouraged me to go for this PhD. And I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I'm just so happy I did. And just being back at Queens with people who really do have that collaborative, let's all work together to enhance science. Let's all sort of find out things. And everyone's just passionate about their projects. And I think that's what I've gathered, is that that's more rare, which I wasn't really aware of. But I definitely think it's moving in that direction, because a lot of people coming into the field aren't wanting to deal with that sort of academic snobbery and kind of hostile atmosphere. And I think that it's important that those people then stay and don't leave the field, because if everyone who wants it that way leaves the field because they're disheartened by experiences, then that's never going to change. And I think that that's such a shame.
Yeah, I think in the last decade or so, we've really started to see an airing out of collective departments,
Yeah.
closet skeletons in there, just because I feel like people have like started speaking up for themselves and being like, you know what, I had a really bad experience here and I don't want this to happen to anyone else. And I'm going to be public and forthright about it. And honestly, it hasn't always ended up great for those people.
No.
That I can think of like people that I know personally that have been super affected by speaking up about a bad situation in their program.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of academic bullying that happens. And I don't think we tell undergraduates about it. Like, it's just not something that you really talk about with them, which is crazy to me, because it's like you would think that you would want to prepare someone, especially if it's an undergraduate that you're super invested in. You'd think that you'd want to prepare them for like how ridiculous a program can be.
Yeah, I think I did actually have, there was sort of one experience at Queens that I felt that way about, but in hindsight, I could definitely see that that wasn't someone trying to be mean. That was someone trying to prepare me, because what I had done is I knew I was going to do my undergraduate thesis on age estimation. So I was in Denmark for the summer. There were some researchers there doing age estimation. I thought, you know what, I'll email them. I'll see if they want to talk to me. I can learn some stuff like that. And that was all fine. And then when I told my then supervisor about it in Belfast, a different supervisor, she sort of, I hadn't really met her before because she was coming in just for the year. And the first time I met her, she sort of gave me a talking to about that, which I sort of took really harshly. But I think she honestly was like, I don't personally really mind that you did that. But if you do go talk to someone, you should usually let your supervisor know. You should ask for permission almost, because she was citing instances that she knew where people might have gotten, lost their PhD supervisors or something because they went and talked to someone that the supervisor was fighting with or didn't like or something like that. And then they could actually lose their supervisor and sort of get really disadvantaged because of that. So she was not at all trying to be mean to me, which it felt like at the time. I was sort of very scared of that, but it was 100% trying to help me be like, you should be careful with doing things like that, because there are some people who are going to take offense to that. And in hindsight, of course, I should have talked to my supervisor about going to other researchers. Of course, I should have done that. But it's just not something that I was thinking about at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was a really good learning experience for me to know that there are going to be people who have these opinions and this academic kind of snobbery and academic bullying that's just ridiculous. And thankfully, it doesn't happen, at least in our department at Queens, which is why it's so nice to be there. But it happens in a lot of departments. And I think that that's not something, like you said, that's talked about enough. And people do end up going to master's programs that they regret because of this. And I wish that was something that had been more focused on, rather than go to the best place. And it's like, no, make sure that you go and visit them. Make sure you go tour the department. Make sure you talk to the people you're going to be working with, because you will get a sense of it.
And also try to talk to students that have graduated from the department who aren't there right now, because that way you'll get a much more clear idea of what it was actually like. And if you can, get names of people that maybe dropped out of the department, because, like, you have to decide for yourself how you feel about like whatever someone's telling you. But I think it's really important to get a bunch of different perspectives.
Yeah, I think because sometimes the students that you're put in touch with for like promotion, they might be the students willing to say favorable things about the department. So it might be a case of trying to find students kind of on your own that have graduated and say, okay, what did you think? So I think that would have been really helpful for me. And I know if I had gone places where I knew the professors that I knew that were fantastic, if I had gone to universities that they collaborated with frequently, where I knew that those people would have the same mindset, I think that would have been much better for me.
Yeah.
And it would have furthered my research and everything more, because you can't do good research in that kind of restrictive environment. It's never gonna turn out well. And you want to work in the departments where everyone can kind of work together on projects and get the best out of it, not where everyone's trying to kind of up each other all the time, because that's not helpful for anyone.
Yeah. If you can too, when you're an undergraduate, if you can find a really trusted mentor or supervisor, that can make a huge difference in your grad career, because you can rely on that person to help you out by telling you like, oh, you don't want to apply to that program because, you know, that supervisor has 20 grad students. They're not going to have any time for you.
Yeah.
You know, or you don't want to apply to program B because there's a really toxic environment there. Like, people know these things, like they talk about them amongst themselves. And if they like you, they'll tell you, but you have to have someone tell you that. Otherwise you don't know, and you can be going into a situation blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that that's generally a huge, and the amount of people that I know, even at kind of quite prestigious schools in the UK, let's say it like that, who've had terrible master's experience in archaeology. And that's, you know, numerous people for numerous years who've just had really, really bad experiences. And it's so sad because they have a good reputation, these schools. And you're like, how do they have a good reputation with so many students having terrible experiences? And I think that that's just something that's really undervalued. Student satisfaction and student experience is something that's generally quite undervalued. And it shouldn't be, because if students aren't happy and aren't satisfied, and that they don't feel like they've been able to learn in their best environment, that's not going to help anyone, really. And I wouldn't be where I am today without Eileen, my supervisor, because, you know, from my first semester and first year, she, you know, got me washing bones, which was the first time I've ever touched human remains. I was like, this is amazing. These are actual, you know, individuals. These are people. And, you know, she helped me continue on in osteology, and now she's helped me. She's my PhD supervisor. And I just wouldn't have done any of that without kind of her guidance and her support, I think.
Yeah.
And so many students like that, because she is that person who just wants everyone to succeed and is like, oh, you could do this or you could do this. Mm-hmm. And that's just helped so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can find someone like that as an undergrad, like, that's incredible. The other reason I recommend finding someone you really trust as an undergraduate, besides like them helping steer you to the right grad program, is that I cannot tell you how many times I was asked to write letters of recommendation for someone who wanted to go to grad school. And they had been in my class, but they had never talked to me, and I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I felt bad, but I would turn them down because I was like, there's nothing for me to say about you besides like she got an A in my class. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
like
it's really important to kind of let your enthusiasm for what you do show to your lecturers, and always ask for kind of extra opportunities. I mean, right now, a lot of the undergraduate at Queens are very into osteology, and I need people to help me wash some of the bones for my PhD thesis. And I had like 11 emails of people being like, I'll help you wash bones, which was fantastic, because they're just really encouraged to kind of help and do all these things. And that's going to be something that's really going to help them in the future, to say, I've had this experience. Because even something like washing bones is experience in handling bones, experience with the osteological materials. Sometimes they lay them out and sort them. So it's just such invaluable experience. And it's really exciting that so many people are really interested in it and really want to get on it.
And you're going to work with these undergrads, and then maybe one of them will ask you for a recommendation letter, and you have something to say about them.
I know. I absolutely, you know, that's kind of one of my goals, is to be a lecturer one day, because I love telling people what I didn't know at that stage. And I sort of love helping people and guiding people, be like, okay, so here's the thing. And I just really enjoy doing stuff like that. So I'm like, you're undergraduates, whatever I can do, whatever you need help with, any advice on literally anything. And I think it's fun. You know, I really like, because I remember, I think we had someone come to talk during my master's program, and a person from outside came to talk, and they were saying, you know, I may be a professor, I may be at this point, but I'm not smarter than you. I'm just further along in my career than you are. And I think that that's something that's really important, because it's not like I'm better than you because I'm a PhD student and you're an undergrad. It's like, I'm further, but that doesn't mean that you know, when you get to my point, you'll be the same.
Yeah. That's actually a sign of an environment that you may want to avoid, actually, is when you show up and people all insist that they're called by their titles, and that that
was my problem. Yeah. That was my initial danger sign with my master's program, was everyone's, I'm doctor this and doctor this. And I think in America, in the US, it's a lot more common. In the UK, it's not common at all.
It's not super common. I think the thing is, what I have found is that researchers who are really good, they don't need to be called doctor. Like, they're like, hey, call me Dan, you know, or call me Doug, or you know, just
I'm like, if you have to constantly remind people that you are a doctor, you're doing something wrong. Whereas
yes.
I went back to Queens at one point and I mentioned that during my master's program, they were asking, you know, you have to refer to me as Dr. This. And I remember one of them just laughed. It's like, imagine if I made you refer to me as Dr. This. That's ridiculous. Sort of for them, that was just completely unheard of. And also me coming from Denmark, you know, even when we're children at school, we call our teachers by their first name. I've never called someone Mr. and Mrs. or Doctor anything. That's just not a thing that we do. So I was just completely shocked. I was like, what is this place? And it was, you know, it was just very restrictive and sort of like treating us like we were children.
Yeah. Well, because the thing is, like, your colleagues or future colleagues, even if you're not like, even if they don't consider you a current colleague, you're still a future colleague. Like, you don't want to be off-putting. And this is something I am saying, having grown up in the exact opposite circumstance from you, which is I grew up in the South and everyone was Mr., Ms., or Mrs. And people I didn't know were sir or ma'am.
I've never called anyone sir or ma'am in my whole life.
Oh my gosh. No, sometimes it pops out of my mouth still. It's really funny because I worked in the service industry for a really long time. So I'll be leaving a bar and the bartender will be like, have a good night. And I'm like, you too, sir. And they're like what? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, it's,
I mean, I think it's lovely and it's very polite, but it's not a thing where I come from. It's very overly formal to the point where it would be really confusing if you, even in Danish, called someone sir or madam. They'd be like, what?
Yeah. And it's like something that's very reflexive for me. So I realized I like had this like moment in my master's degree where I think it was like maybe the second or third week where I had someone get mad that I hadn't referred to them as like professor or doctor. And I was like, I've worked with one of the best I've worked with some of the best anthropologists in the world as like their interns, and all of them had me call them by their first names. And if that's good enough for them, why isn't it good enough for you? And the way that they went about it is instead of talking to me about it, they went and talked to my advisor and said that I was being disrespectful.
Oh, see, that's a sign of a really toxic environment. Because even if they should be able to say to you, look, I would prefer that you refer to me like this. And you can say, you know, internally you can think, okay, I kind of don't like that. But at least you feel like they respected you enough to say that straight to you, rather than kind of going over your head and telling your mother on you or something like that, which makes you feel like
exactly
you're a child, which is not, you know, you are a colleague. And even at a master's level, even at an undergraduate level, to a certain extent, you're at least a future colleague.
Yeah. And you know what, even if you're not a future colleague, you should still be treated with respect because you're a human being and you're deserving of that.
Yeah. It's just a very disheartening experience that I really have been quite vocal about to the people around me, because I don't want anyone else to go through that, because it was just, I felt like I could have been so much, not necessarily in my career, but personally could have been so much further along if I had gone somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So not to completely dishearten undergraduates out there, because the truth is, like, you did find your way and you are super happy now.
I'm doing what I absolutely love. And I think it's definitely starting to be quite a lot of places that don't have that kind of academic snobbery sort of environment. I think it's becoming a lot more normal, and it's becoming a lot more normal for people being able to speak up. Because I know that the professors or the lecturers and everything that has still had those kind of attitudes are slowly retiring. Honestly, that is the fact. A lot of them seem to be older. At my master's program, curiously, they were all quite young. So that was just sort of the environment that they wanted.
I think sometimes too, people feel like I had to go through this terrible thing, so now you have to go through this terrible thing, instead of thinking,
will never understand that
I can stop the cycle. You know what I mean?
If I went through something terrible, what I want to do is help someone to never repeat what I had to go through. I don't want them to have to go through it too. I think that's just such a strange perspective to have. And I just think, you know, if it's all about science and it's about the research, and especially we're working with human remains, about telling their stories and finding out as much as we can about them. And I just think all this kind of interpersonal squabbling and sort of high school drama things, it just doesn't have any place in this sort of academic environment.
Yeah. I will say, having worked in many different environments, you are never going to work somewhere without some degree of gossip and drama. Like, that is just the human condition. But
I mean, there's always going to be, but is it a toxic environment
yes.
or is it just a normal environment?
Or is it just, so, like just go into whatever job you have, knowing that that is probably something you're going to have to deal with. Even if you're a freelancer, you're still going to have to deal with clients, and clients can be nuts. So just know that, in your heart of hearts, it's never going to be perfect, but like try and find a place where it's something that you can live with and something that can help push you along further in your career in a healthy way, like a sustainable way.
Yeah. And help you even as a person and as a researcher really, really grow and expand maybe your interest or your fields or get new contacts and things. Because I know, so many people now who are like, oh, I know this person, I can get you in contact with them, or we can have you do this. And it's all super collaborative. I mean, I'm sort of a joint student with Queens University Belfast and then University of Aberdeen, because I have what's called a quadrat doctoral training partnership. So I'm joint between the two schools. And that's really exciting because I have supervisors in Aberdeen as well. And I have one of my sort of unofficial tertiary supervisors, Mark Oxenham, helped develop one of the methods I'm using. And he's from Australia, so he has his whole team over there. So it's so collaborative. And I really, really enjoy being part of something like that, where there's no squabbling and there's no people dislike this. Let's all
it's cool to
have a project.
It's cool to get to talk to people who are smart.
And they're all amazingly smart. And I'm like, this is so intimidating. But then they're the nicest people you meet. And you're like, fantastic. Mm-hmm. And that's the goal.
Definitely. And then this is just a message that I have for people out there, is that grad school is not right for everyone, right? Like that should necessarily be everyone's goal. I mean, I went to grad school and I realized that academia wasn't for me. Like I don't have like the type of focus that academia requires. Like I just like too many things, and I'm not interested in any one thing for long enough to make a good researcher.
Yeah.
And that's just like a fundamental truth about myself that I did not see until I got my master's. And after getting my master's, I was like, there's no way I could do a PhD. Like I would be the bane of an advisor's existence. I would be very sad too. So, like it's okay to try it and realize it's not for you and then do something else. Like the skills that you're learning, hopefully you're learning skills in grad school, like some skills, but the skills that you're learning in grad school, you can then apply to another job. Like it's not time wasted, even if it's not something that you ultimately decide to pursue long term.
No, and I know even a lot of corporate jobs and stuff are even just asking for any degree in anything. And they say that all those skills are transferable and you can come here and make whatever you want of that. So there's just so many options out there. And I think in general, and this is maybe a weird thing to say on a sort of podcast like that, but I think it's a lot more common in Denmark than I think it is in the UK for stuff like trade school and different things than academia to be the goal. I mean, it's a lot more common in Denmark in a lot of ways to not go the sort of high school route, because you go straight to sort of a trade school and you get educated. And that's, amazingly important in society. And that doesn't mean that you're not just as smart as someone with a PhD. It's just you're doing something different. Your skill set is
for sure.
A different skill set completely.
This is actually a huge problem here as well. And this is something that I've thought about a lot teaching undergraduates, which is that we tell young people that the only way to be successful is to go to college. And that's just not true. There's a lot of different paths for different people. And especially in the US, it's so expensive to go to school. It can be a very expensive mistake to make. Like if you're not sure about going to college, now I'm just talking to undergraduates. If you're not sure about going to college, I guess high school students, I don't know how many high school students listen to this, but if you're not sure about going to college, don't go. Just wait a little bit. There's no rule saying you have to go at 18. Like
I didn't.
Yeah.
I took 2 gap years after I left my high school. And that was the best thing that I ever did, because I came to university at a much more mature level, which did cause problems because I was sort of not really up for the freshman drinking sort of vibe, at least for me personally. But it didn't mean that I knew what I kind of wanted to do. I knew how I wanted to do it. I was a lot more focused on it. And I don't see any reason why you should rush into it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the flip side of that too, one thing that I've heard from people is like, oh, I wish I could go back to school, but like I'm in my 40s. And I'm like, you're still going to be 41 next year, right? Like,
I mean, look, I think all PhD students of the first year PhD students, maybe the second years as well, all except for like 2 are all in their 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
And a lot of the undergraduates I know as well, some of them are, in their 40s or in their 50s. And there's, it's really quite common, I think, especially in something like archaeology, because it's something that a lot of young people don't think of as a viable career path. And then you get older and you're like, oh, wait, it really is. And there's a lot of demand right now for commercial archaeologists. So there really are jobs to a certain extent.
Yeah.
In it. And there's quite a few that do it later in life. And I think that that's fantastic, because you're, like you say, you're going to age either way.
So you might as well, if you want to get the degree, you might as well be 41 with the degree.
Exactly.
So I guess our message to you is go to school whenever the heck you want to go. It's fine.
Exactly. Honestly, take your time, make sure it's what you want. Because I think it's the same in the UK. Things cost money, especially in England. It's, £9,000 a year. And a lot of people go into their first year and they just aren't sure they want to be there. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know what they want to do. They just kind of went because it's the thing to do. And I just think that that's a bit sad, at that point. It's sad for that person that they're sort of in a situation that they don't feel they necessarily would want to be in.
Yeah.
So I think it's just normalizing taking gap years before college and thinking,
or gap decades.
Or gap decades, go and do something else, work, and then say, oh, okay, I kind of want to go back and get this degree, which is, I think, becoming increasingly common. And I think that that's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. So is there anything else you would like to say about your research or grad school?
Even if this is talking to anyone who might be in a bad situation or in a bad grad school, had really bad experiences, there are good places and you can find them. It's just about kind of knowing how to look for it. And I think going to talk to people, if you email advisors, like I know you say a lot that people are more than happy to talk to you, and most people are, but if you email someone at a university, I think you'll pretty quickly be able to kind of sense the kind of environment you'll be in if you do go there. So I think that that's just a really important message, to make sure you check it out, you go there if you can, or you talk to these people and interact before you decide to go anywhere, because it can be really soul destroying to be in a program that's literally soul destroying.
Yeah. And you know what? If you're in a terrible program right now and you need to talk to someone, you're more than welcome to email me. I'm happy to talk to you. I don't know if I can help you, but I'm happy to talk to you and see if there's anything that I can do to help.
You're welcome to email me too, by the way. Trust me, I've been there.
So there you go. You've got two people who believe in you and want to help you out.
That's the inspiring message we want you to take away from this.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I think that was great. So I think now it's time for me to ask you about reading.
The most difficult questions.
So if someone would like to learn more about your area of research, what should they read?
This is such a tricky one. What should they read? I think there's kind of a couple of sort of general textbooks. There's Interpreting Behavior from the Human Skeleton, I think it's called. And that's just a really good kind of general textbook about how you can look at the skeleton and find out different things about it, which is one of the things that I found really cool, is how much you can actually tell about these people and how they lived and who they were from their skeleton. I'm looking at things in a little bit more of a wider context of what we call the osteological paradox, which is not something we really got onto, but it's a bit of a complicated of how much can we actually tell about people's health and stress from the past, given the information that we have in the skeleton. So there's a couple articles by Daniel Temple, which are really good, that I think you link on your website potentially.
Yes.
Which I think would be a quite good introduction. I don't think they're super sort of academically dense. It can be kind of hard to judge at a certain point because you read so many of them. But they're definitely really interesting and really an important place to start to thinking about health and stress in the past and past populations.
Yeah, I think those are great recommendations, and I will definitely post those if you send them to me. Second question. What are you reading for work right now?
What am I not reading for work? Thankfully, I finished a lot of my lit review for now. So I'm reading mostly site reports. I am doing an internship from next week where I'm going to be learning how to radiocarbon date and do isotopic analysis. So currently I'm reading some site reports to figure out which of my skeletons I would like to do radiocarbon dating on. And then I'm reading a book by my supervisor and Katrina McKenzie and Eileen Murphy on the skeletons from a site called Ballyhanna down in County Donegal in Ireland, which is a fantastic book with a really comprehensive overview of that site and everything they found and everything that they can tell from it. So that's something I've been really enjoying reading through, just, even for fun, honestly, which is, I don't know, potentially sad.
No, it just means you love what you do. And I'm so happy for you.
It's a really well-written book, I think. So I really enjoy reading that and everything that they were able to kind of tell from the people there.
Mm-hmm. And so now, the last question, what are you consuming for fun?
Listening a lot to this podcast.
Yes, you can definitely come back.
I just bribe you with compliments.
Yep.
No, but I really do. And I think it's so difficult for a PhD student to try to read outside of what I am looking at. So I have no idea what else is going on in the field of anthropology right now, except for listening to your podcast, where I thankfully get, and the Arcanet podcast as well, which I'm listening to, where you get to hear about other people's fantastic research. Because otherwise it would be really, really difficult for me to, you do get journals and you can read them, but it can be so difficult to muster up the mental energy once you finish reading 10 articles a day for your own research. So it's really helped me. And then I was reading the book by Dr. Daniel Lieberman's first book, so not his newest book, but the one called The Story of the Human Body, Evolution, Health and Disease, I think it's called, which I have very much enjoyed. It's taken me ages to get through it because every page I stop and I tell, I'm like, did you know this? I'll sort of start talking to everyone around me about what I just read. So it's just taken me ages to get through it, but it's really, really good. It's a really good read.
It's a really good book. I recommend that all the time to people. I agree that there's like a lot of information. It's like you look at it and you're like, this shouldn't take too long to read because it looks short, but it's like there's just so much information on each page that I'm just like, you have to process both intellectually and emotionally.
It's a lot of processing. But it's very, very well written and it's very accessible. And I've been really enjoying it. And then I listen to a lot of true crime stuff. And I've been listening to the podcast Serial, which is sort of sometimes true crime, sometimes a bunch of other stuff. But it's a really, really good podcast.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really good. So I actually grew up in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so the first season of Serial, they were describing a lot of things like near me, and I remember it was just like a very weird feeling to like be in Anacostia and like look around and be like, oh,
oh, it's over there. I see.
So
yeah, you don't get that a lot when you're from Denmark.
Yeah, fair. Well, anyway, it has been an absolute delight to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for emailing me.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's always lovely to, everyone really is desperate. Well, not desperate, but really excited to talk about our research and everything. So thank you so much for having me on and giving me the opportunity to have a wee chat with you.
Of course. Well, you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Anthrobiology Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me at gabby.lapera@anthrobiology.com. That's spelled GABY.LAPERA@anthrobiology.com. This show is produced by me. Music courtesy of Chad Crouch, aka Poddington Bear at Sound of Picture.